Titling this one DIRTT Networks 101, and we're very pleased to have with us Clayton Smed from the Power and Networks team, as well as Paul Garner. I think we might have Paul Wilson jumping on too, but he is here. Don't expect too much from him. The guy's a Winnipeg Jets fan after all, but he's on the call as well. So I'm going to let Clayton kind of take it away and introduce everything that he's going to talk about today along with his team. But just as a matter of information, I'm going to go ahead and unmute everyone's microphones so you can feel free to come on and ask any questions you might have just right over the phone there. Just as, of course, a word of caution that if you notice a lot of background noise where you are, maybe put your phone on mute when you're not talking so that it's not distracting everyone else. And you can also just type your question into the chat window there, and I'll keep an eye on those, and we can bring those questions up as well. So without any further ado, I'm going to hit it over to Clayton and team, and you guys can take it away.
Perfect. Thanks, Matt. Yeah, guys, so just a heads up, this is going to be a lot less formal than maybe some of the webinars you've done. I have asked Matt to let you guys all have open access to the mics, ask questions at will, so I'd say don't bother filling in the chat menu with your questions. Just go ahead and interrupt me anytime you want, jump in, ask questions. I've got about maybe 10 minutes worth of materials to cover, but I want you guys to be able to ask questions on everything. There are no dumb questions. There is going to be a wide variety of knowledge levels on networks. Some people are going to know absolutely nothing. Some people are going to know quite a bit. And that's the purpose of this network webinar, is to get everyone kind of understanding DIRTT solution and what we do and why we do it. So if you have a very basic question, feel free to ask it. If you have a kind of a more complicated question, go ahead and ask that as well. The first session is certainly a lot smaller. I see there's only about 13 or 15 of us on right now. We're going to have another one later on in February that is going to be, we're going to do an email blast to all our partners from their local networks experts, and we're going to promote more people jumping onto this webinar to learn about networks, and that one's, I can imagine we're probably going to get over 100 at that one, so this is very much a dry run. So as we go through, guys, feel free to at the end I'm going to ask for feedback on what the webinar covers, what it does well, what it doesn't do well, so next time, again, when we have a much bigger audience, we can go a lot smoother. So with that in mind, I'm going to get started here. So DIRTT Networks 101. Like everything else DIRTT does, DIRTT revolves around looking at the world of conventional construction and looking at where the inefficiencies lie. So the same reason why we used a pre-manufactured wall solution or a pre-manufactured millwork solution is the same exact reason why we would use a pre-manufactured network solution. It's all about doing more work in the factory ahead of time, pre-designing during ice, with using ice, and just basically adding a level of organization to the process whereby the price tag off the start might be a little bit more from DIRTT, but the cost savings during install on day one as well as on the back end on day 2 and day 3 and moves, adds, and changes is significantly reduced. So again, it's important to remember DIRTT Networks is really in line with everything else we do as a company. All right, so I'm going to jump on. Some of the stuff I'm going to cover today is going to be conventional versus modular networking, how ICE currently supports our network solution and how it's going to support our network solution in the future, our specific network approach and what we do that's a little bit different than the conventional world. The future of networking, what our solution is today is not necessarily what it's going to be even in 6 months down the road, so we're going to touch on that a little bit. And as well as we're going to go into to how to close a deal and how to actually get clients to specify DIRTT networks on their projects. So going to take a quick look at conventional networks and the way the world works right now. It's very straightforward. Every time you have a network cable at a desk, whether it's voice or internet, you have one cable going all the way from the work area outlet all the way back to the IT closet. That might be 20 feet away, that might be 150 feet away, that might be 350 feet away, but it's very simple. It's a one-to-one connection. So in this scenario, both ends of every cable are terminated on site, which is a very time-consuming process. That's probably where most of the time on a network's install is going to be terminating the ends. And the system itself gives absolutely no flexibility. If an outlet needs to be added, for example, up here, Matt, I assume everyone can see my mouse. Matt, you there? Okay. Can someone jump in? You guys can see my mouse?
I can see
Yep,
it.
we can see it.
Okay. Yeah, thanks guys. Okay. So for example, if I want to add an outlet right here, and I want to give this user 2 network outlets, I have to run 2 network cables all the way back, probably share a cable tray or whatever, all the way back to the IT closet. In terms of actually physically doing that, you're definitely looking at an after-hours install or a weekend install, and it's very time-consuming, it's very expensive, and like I said, moves, adds, and changes are definitely best not made during work hours, and most likely done by, not most likely, they will be done by an IT contractor. Moving on to DIRTT Networks. So first and foremost, DIRTT Networks use ICE. Now, cards on the table, you are able to draw DIRTT Networks in ICE, and you are able to specify DIRTT Networks in ICE. However, it is not 100% complete in terms of the way the rest of the world works. As you all know, if you're going to draw a wall or a piece of millwork or whatever in ICE, it's going to keep track of all the manufacturing information, the costs, the SFN, the RCS, all that stuff. ICE isn't all the way where it needs to be for networks, but it does have the design platform. You are able to draw in all your components and do the design. Right now there's work that has to be done by the Power and Networks team to take these the rest of the way, and soon, I won't quote timelines because ICE won't quote timelines, but the full Arrive network solution will be in ICE, including pricing and specification and absolutely everything. So that is being done in 2015, I'll say. So looking at this further, our network cables are pre-manufactured just like our power components. All the networking components are pre-manufactured, and this will mean they will install 70% quicker than conventional. So I just got these little images here. You can see the first one, you got a guy actually terminating a cable. He's got the wires spliced at the end. He's got to feed them into the head. He's got to use his tool to punch it, and he's got to check it. That is one process for terminating one jack or one plug. Now imagine doing that several thousand times over the course of a project while on site, running around the site. It's a very, very time-consuming process. So like everything else we do at DIRTT, we pre-manufacture our cables. So we'll be doing that in our factory. You know, Mogens always says if it takes, 10 minutes in the factory, it takes 3 hours in the field, right? And that's what the same thing we do with our powers, the same thing you do with our network. All of these terminations will be done in a controlled environment ahead of time. So if you kind of look at this layout right here versus the conventional layout I showed you, we make use of what's called consolidation points. Because I'm going to take a quick break for questions at this point before I keep going. Does anyone have any questions to this point? Nothing?
Not I.
Okay. All right. Good. We'll keep going then. I think my next slide is the consolidation points. Here we go. So again, we will use this is if you guys are familiar with zone power. We use what's called the consolidation points. It's similar to a zone box to distribute our network cables. So what we're going to do in any scenario is we're going to lay out these consolidation points on some sort of grid, usually a 30 by 30 foot grid, but that will definitely depend on the space it's going into. And what we're going to do, for example, say this little pod of offices right here, these low walls, say you need 18 live ports on day one for your day one design. Well, what we're going to do on day one is we're going to bring a pre-terminated, what we call a primary cable bundle, 24 ports to the CP. So we're going to bring 24 cables, pre-terminated, pre-bundled to the consolidation point. So at this consolidation point on day one, we have 24 live ports back to the IT closet, but we're only using 18 within this little office pod right here. So what does that mean? Again, in the conventional world, if I want to add an outlet here, for example, a hotel station, and I want to give them a voice and then internet outlets, conventionally, if they want to make that add, they've got to run cables all the way back to the IT closet, right? It's very time-consuming. It's very expensive for moves, adds, and changes. Here, if you want to, with DIRTT Networks, if you want to add an outlet here, it's as simple as using your secondary cables and tying them back into this consolidation point. And again, we know on day one we have 6 live ports available here, and another 6 live ports available here, and another 6 ports available here. So that the way we design it is very strategic. And the question you're going to get asked is, okay, so you're saying I'm paying more on day one for cabling than I would otherwise. And the answer to that question is yes. There are more cables running back to the IT closet on day one than during a conventional install. But like I said, I had a client in here 2 weeks ago from Anchorage, Alaska, and they ran healthcare offices. And when I showed the guy these consolidation points, he said to me, he said, "You're telling me that if I want to make a change, I just have to tie into one of those consolidation points instead of going all the way back to the IT closet?" I said, "That's exactly what I'm telling you." And he said, "This is insane." He says, "I have 2 people, full-time staff, and all they do is reconnect network cables and remove old network cables." So, the people that are used to dealing with these IT worlds they will understand the benefit of using this consolidation point system. Anything to add to that, Paul?
No, I think you've pretty much covered most of it there.
Clayton, this is Lance. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I'll throw out one thing. A certain unnamed company that starts with an N and ends with a Netflix.
A Netflix, yeah.
Came to Salt Lake City, and they were very resistant. It was on the early end of their projects, and they were very resistant. They actually used DIRTT Networks, but they chose to follow this scheme of one-to-one. Everything that happens on one side just goes directly to the other. So all they really got from us was the pre-terminated ends advantage. Since they've moved in, and this has only been a couple of months, they've already had the IT guys back running 5 or 6 lines, which turned into a huge headache, a huge nightmare. And the word that we get here is they would never do that again. They would always do a handful of extras in each location, and do it in zones. And
to prove that, Lance, and the whole reason why we did the Salt Lake City space with networks was to give us a shot at the 2 giant buildings they're doing in California, which we won. Both buildings in California are all going DIRTT Networks, and they're all going consolidation points. Because of the exact reason they decided to specify. They did use DIRTT components, but they did it conventionally. We told them not to. They did it anyway, and right after they did the install, they said, "Man, we should have used these consolidation points." They kind of had to learn their lesson the hard way, but all the buildings in the 2 big buildings in Los Gatos, California for Netflix are all going consolidation point networks.
Yeah,
so
they regretted it within 3 days of being done.
Exactly, and that's that's the thing you'll find is once they get it, they get it. So, any other questions, guys, before I move on here? Okay. Network cable manufacturer. Now, a lot of times the spec on a project, it might not be, sometimes it's a loose spec. It's just saying you need to use, this cable manufacturer or similar is the term they will use. So they're basically saying we don't really care what the manufacturer is, just has to be Cat 6 or whatever they say. So in that scenario, we'll use what we call DIRTT Networks components. We stock Hubble. We have a deal set up with Hubble where we get good prices from Hubble, and we're able to in turn offer that to our partners and obviously our clients. So we actually stock Hubble Cat 6 components in blue. So again, if it's a loose spec and they don't really care exactly what they're using, and that's probably about 70% of jobs we do, we spec our Hubble components. We stock it all in all our we stock it in Kelowna, Phoenix, and Savannah, and we manufacture like everything else. We do 2 weeks manufacturing plus 1 week for shipping, just like our walls. If a lot of times you will get a spec that specifically calls out for Panduit or Leviton or Amp or CommScope or one of any other 100 network manufacturers that are out there. And we do have a supplier for any one of those. Like I said, about 30% of the work we're doing right now is random manufacturers. We have a supplier that will actually get us the components and actually build those components for us. So we're very manufacturer neutral. We can do any manufacturer at any level. So Cat 5, Cat 5e, Cat 6, Cat 6a, all the different levels of network cables we can do. I don't think, Paul, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we've run into anything that's been requested for us that we haven't been able to meet yet, have we?
No, I mean, if it exists, we can get it manufactured.
Yeah. The only question is going to be lead time. Generally, we can still meet we generally say if it's not Hubble, we offer 4-week manufacturing 1 week, but in every case so far, we've been able to improve upon that lead time as well. So lead time really isn't an issue for our stuff. Any questions on manufacturers? Nothing? Okay. We'll continue. And get into future plans. I'm not going to get, this is something called PON or passive optical networks. I'm not going to go into a great deal of detail on this. I just kind of want to let you guys know what's available and what's certainly coming from DIRTT. We're going to do our big introduction on this at what we're calling Connect obviously our DIRTT GLC during the NeoCon show. We're now calling it Connects. And essentially, I've got this image to the right. You can see the first image is our conventional networking. Our second image is DIRTT's current approach. The third image kind of represents what we're going to be able to do with fiber optics. One of these little fiber cables, it can carry as much information as about 1,000 of these copper cables, and both the conventional solution and the DIRTT network solution using consolidation points, they're both copper-based solutions. So to put this into perspective, the way the world works right now is a city's infrastructure is actually done using fiber. So you actually have a fiber system that's connecting all the way to the building. Now the second we get, in commercial areas, the second we get to the building, we insist on changing that signal from your fiber to your copper and shooting copper cables all the way up through the building. All essentially passive optical networks does is it takes that fiber connection that's coming to the building, and instead of reaching out into the building using copper and copper and copper and a whole bunch of copper, it actually takes it all the way to something similar to our consolidation points as fiber. So we actually continue that fiber all the way into the building. So we don't stop at the IT closet. What that allows you to do is the actual space required in an IT closet is cut by about 90%. You can have a closet that's might be 100 square feet, might go down to that you need about 10 square feet. It's the amount of space required is significantly reduced, and as a result, the amount of cooling for those components in the IT closet is significantly reduced. So there's already a huge footprint reduction, and the fiber cable itself, the Cat 5, 5E, Cat 6, Cat 6A, all the copper, they have known bandwidths, and the reason why you would go from Cat 5E to a Cat 6 or Cat 6A is for bandwidth requirements, right? Some are quicker than others. Fiber has no known bandwidth. The testing equipment, I'm not going to quote numbers right now because that's more Scott Isaac's territory, but there's actually the testing equipment that they have to measure speed through a copper cable or a fiber cable cannot measure the bandwidth of a fiber cable. So the term they use for bandwidth when using fiber is unlimited bandwidth, which means you're essentially future-proofing your space. So anyway, that's about as much detail as I'm going to get into passive optical networks. I will say we are already currently specifying a couple projects with passive optical networks. We actually approached Netflix with this. It was a little late in the game to make the change, but they were quite taken with the solution, and we definitely have some exciting things to show at DIRTT Connects this year in Chicago. Paul, anything to add on that? Or guys, any questions on that?
The only thing I would maybe add is talking about the DIRTT Networks conduit a little bit.
Okay.
Basically, if you've got a project and inspect EMT or rigid conduit in there, or it needs to be over an inch in diameter capacity, we have to go to what we call the DIRTT Networks conduit. I'm sure a lot of people have already come across this and had questions over it. I know Info Team have a lot. But it basically means that in government kind of projects, hospitals, that kind of thing, there's always an inch or an inch and a quarter kind of specification to protect the network infrastructure. And in that case, we have to come and use this networks conduit, which Clayton's bringing up here. And it basically just means that oval conduit we can't actually fit into the dirt wall. It doesn't fit into the frame, so we have to go to this rectangular. And this needs to be specified on every drop where a network cable needs to come down into it. And it also helps with the terminated heads on the end, the jacks on the end. They can easily fit down that chase as opposed to the smaller conduit where it's really tough to get it down. So and that end cap comes off, you can just screw it off and pull the cables down through it. So this really helps.
Yeah, it's a good point. Good point, Paul. I didn't have that built in here, but the DIRTT network conduit, it's exactly, we can't, because we pre-terminate, we cannot pull down a 3/4 inch EMT. We have to use this DIRTT Networks conduit. So if you're specifying DIRTT Networks on a project, we will automatically default to this component right here.
And that's only when conduit is actually spec'd. A lot of the time, we're finding EMTs just being, we spec it in the walls, it just comes as standard, and then it's just being thrown away on site. So a lot of the time, a bit of upfront kind of conversation with the engineers to find out if the conduit is actually needed in the first place.
Exactly. It's jurisdiction by jurisdiction. So we ask that our partners know their jurisdiction, whether networks conduit's required. Lance, obviously, Salt Lake City, we did not require any network conduit on that project. Is that correct? Lance, you even listening? We lost Lance. Okay. In any case, yeah, Salt Lake City, Netflix, we did not have to use networks conduit, which was a big saving to the partner and the client, right? They could specify the whole project without that. So. And the last thing I want to touch on is, and I haven't mentioned yet, is Scott Isaacs. And Scott Isaacs, I apologize, he was supposed to be on this call, but he's actually in Los Gatos, California, working with Netflix right now. Scott Isaacs has over 20 years of experience in networking and over 10 in modular networking. And when it comes to network solution, Paul Garner and myself can speak to it quite competently, but we can do about 20% of what Scott Isaacs can do. You know, when that conversation is with the IT contractor, the IT consultant, Scott can just go to the next level and have those in-depth conversations. And we wouldn't expect any of our partners or anyone, or even our DIRTT reps or DIRTT champions to go into that level. The goal in any situation should be to get Scott Isaacs to the table and to win the job. And right now, I mean, he's flying across North America, meeting with partners and meeting with IT contractors. And I would say when he goes and meets with them, we're getting realistically over 90% of the jobs. It's very low-hanging fruit, and it is actually quite easy to win those projects. So. For example, this is just in the last kind of 6 months or a year. Texas A&M University, Scott flew in, did a presentation, got the networks on it. Netflix, Scott flew to Los Gatos and met with them, got the networks. Avila University flew down to Kansas City, got the whole project. Momoit in Toronto, Canada, flew down there, met with their IT guy, got the project. I mean, Scott has a way. IT contractors are very difficult people, and they think they know everything about everything. So when they do come to Calgary, a lot of times I'll talk to them and they're very pushbacky and they say, oh, here's every reason why DIRTT Networks won't work on our project. And I have a hard time talking to those people because it's a very stubborn conversation. Scott Isaacs is different. Scott Isaacs is very good at talking to those people, and when he's done the conversation, he has a way of specifying DIRTT Networks but making the IT contractor think it was their idea. It's very funny to see, actually. In any case, if anyone ever has an opportunity to get Scott Isaacs into their territory, or a networks might be, and I'll tell you one thing for sure, networks is an opportunity on almost every single project. I can't tell you how many times we limp into a project, they're starting to get excited about DIRTT, and we say, okay, now what are you doing for networks? And they say, oh, I don't really know, we're thinking about using an IT guy. That is the perfect opportunity for us to get in because they haven't even, a lot of times they don't even know who the supplier is going to be. We pitch them DIRTT Networks, we win it, and it's just, like I said, it's very low-hanging fruit. And for sure our network sales have already doubled in the last 6 months, and I think they're going to probably triple or quadruple over the next year just because we're starting to go after these opportunities, and we're finding it, usually when we get Scott Isaacs involved, it's turning out to be quite easy to win these projects with networks. Not always, but a lot of times it really is that easy. So.
So Clayton, this is Lance. I finally found my mute button and I'm able to speak again. Hey, we had Scott in town yesterday and brought a handful of different, they were all IT people, but honestly the only objection that we ended up having at the end is this too good to be true? They literally went through all the questions, he batted them all down. They got into the minutia of like whether there's 5 nines or 6 nines of reliability in a system and whatnot, and it was amazing to watch.
Yeah, he definitely has a talent for it. It's certainly a talent I don't have. I hope to learn one day, but I really wouldn't recommend going after a networks project seriously without using Scott. I think that's a level of expertise that you need, and very few people have. And Scott, not only does Scott have it, but he has it as it relates to DIRTT Networks specifically. So he's the guy you want at the table. It's low-hanging fruit, and there's nothing but money to be made when it comes to networks. Our partners that have attempted to sell it with Scott and are doing it are now doing it are going after on every single project because they're like, holy shit, this is easy, and there's just nothing but money to be made on it. So. Anyway, that's it for Scott, and so this is that, guys. That's it. All I have for DIRTT Networks. It was just the point of today's session was a brief overview, get everyone a little bit more comfortable with DIRTT Networks and what we do and why we do it. I'll open up the floor, one, to any final questions we have, and two, if you guys have any feedback on stuff that maybe you thought should have been covered on this webinar, or stuff you thought maybe you thought we would cover but we didn't, that we can improve upon for our next webinar. Like I said, that'll be over 100 people. That would be greatly appreciated. So guys, the floor is open to anyone who has any questions or comments right now.
I'll jump in real quick. One other thing to make note of is that all of our cables, consolidation points come pre-labeled, and that it also comes with a full set of install drawings. So it's not just a pre-manufactured solution coming to site, but you get the full install drawing, so it's easy to lay out. It's all predetermined.
Well, kind of building on that, one of the other things that came up yesterday, people really love iced, and it's something that doesn't even get touched. Nobody actually has something in a network drawing that anybody understands other than the electrical engineer and the network installer. So being able to turn that into something cool and visible was impactful. The question came up of, hey, we all want ice. Can we get ice? And you know, Scott was talking that there might be a price tag to that for these different developers. At what point is it DIRTT, and at what point is it just a ice purchase?
Yeah, that's a good point, and we've got Philip, the IT guy for Netflix and Los Gatos. He's on ice. He has ice loaded on his computer, and he's actually using our networks catalog in ice to manage a lot of the stuff that he's doing too. So that's a big one for sure. And to Paul's point, drawings. Our drawings were bad about a year ago when it kind of jumped into this. One of the big complaints about our DIRTT Networks was our drawings. They've since completely been a complete 180, and they're one of the best parts of our networks are our drawings. IT installers, IT contractors love our drawings. They're very simple, straightforward to follow, and like I said, yeah, that's one of the biggest successes we've had is in our drawings.
Clayton,
Yeah,
Shannon.
Hey, Shannon.
Hey, a couple things that I, just from my previous life, that may help, or maybe this isn't the right time, but one is the lead time of conventional networks is quite a bit longer than that.
Yeah.
And it has to be ordered, like, at the front end with flooring and lighting.
And that's a good point. I think I sometimes take for granted, being from DIRTT, that our lead times are so awesome that you forget to mention that as well. But it's a good point, Shannon.
And then another thing that, and actually I remember projects where I'm like, oh my God, I wish I had DIRTT Networks on it, was the limit length on the conventional networks.
So to be clear, our length. Paul, Garner, you speak better than I will, but our length restrictions from the IT closet to the work area outlet aren't any different than conventional networks. That's EIA, TIA network regulations that are set. There's maximum channel lengths that you're able to do from your outlet to the IT closet. So yeah. I don't think we're any different than conventional networks in that scenario. That's just these networking regulations that you have to follow in North America.
That's just the capacity of the cable you use, and it doesn't make a difference if it's modular or not.
Okay.
But that, to be clear, that would very much drastically change when you move to this new PON networks thing that we're unleashing at DIRTT Connects.
Okay, got it. Yeah, that'll be a huge selling point, because we literally went from the executive's office to the IT closet. We're within 2 inches. So of putting in another IT closet, so it can be a deal breaker.
Yeah. So PON definitely will deal with that. So.
Okay, and then one thing that I ran into a lot was the gray area in the IT closet. So who's punching down, who isn't, where do we start, where do we stop? Kind of like our panel manager that we have for, and explaining that, I think, would help.
And that's a good point. So, and that's another thing we do is we have a very, very clearly defined scope of work document for our network solution. It explains, it's similar to our power ones. I think our network one is much better than our power ones. It explains exactly what our scope is, exactly what we're providing, and exactly what the network installer has to do and what they need to provide and what they need to install. It not only does it explain, in words what they need to do and what we need to do, it also has a separate checklist. So we actually have a networks checklist that it goes through and it checks off everything DIRTT does and checks off everything that they do. So that There's no gray area, and we've been through that scope of work, and people have come back and said, what about this and what about this, and all those questions we've added to that network scope of work document. So I think as of right now, I'm confident that thing deals with any questions that might come up related to who does what.
Yeah, there's something they need to understand is, well, when we're designing it, like in-house, when we're designing the solution to start with, in our quote we're going to give things like racks, patch panels, any switches that they want, all that kind of thing. Our solution doesn't necessarily finish at the cabling. We can fit out, I mean, that's what Scott did for the networks. He fitted out the whole IT room using ICE and using the data center stuff in ICE to do that with. So every project's kind of different with networks, we find. Sometimes they just want us to bring the cables to the IT room and forget it. They'll do everything in the rack. Sometimes they want us to provide the rack and the patch panels, and then they'll do all the switching. So it's kind of a upfront conversation that needs to be taking place between us or the DP and the contractor.
That's a great point, Paul. And I apologize to everyone on the call. I forgot to mention that this call probably made it seem like we were just a cabling solution. Paul brings up a great point. We absolutely can deal with all that, a lot of the stuff that happens in the IT closet, being the racks and the patch panels and patch cords and stuff like that. We won't get into detail of what those are and what they do, but you probably all have that image of that IT closet in your head. A lot of that stuff that's actually in there, we can and do often do as part of our full solution.
Clayton?
Yes.
Would you guys have time to include, I think for me the next question is okay, how do I do this? How does it get accomplished?
So right now, well, what do you mean, like actually specifying network solution?
I mean, right now, if I were to end, I would think, well, do I go into ICE and do I start dropping these pieces in, or? Good
question. Good question. The answer is no. Right now, like I said, ICE can do consider walls. Consider walls. 100% of walls are in ICE. I'd say networks are probably at about 50%, and as a result, we wouldn't ask any of our partners to attempt to do anything. Right now, what we ask our partners to do is to fill out the checklist on their project. So they say, here's a project. Here's everything we know about the project. Here are the the drawings. There might be electrical engineer drawings with networking on them. Then they would send it to our team, the Networks and Power Pricing, NAPP@DIRTT.net, and our team handles 100% of designing, 100% of quoting, and we would give the partner back the quote and the actual ICE file with the design done in the ICE file as well as the scope of work document. And if it's depending on what stage of the game it is, or if requested, we can also do drawings with our initial power grid package as well. So as of right now, the ball is 100% in DIRTT's court. Power, obviously, recently we released power training to the world, asking our partners to draw their own power, as they should. It's not so complicated that they're not able to do it themselves, and frankly, we need to empower our partners not to just let us do it and then it go out to the world, right? That's exactly why we put the power training together, is to teach them and have them and do it themselves, and teach them how to fish, that whole scenario. But in any case, networks is a little more complicated than power, certainly, with all the different solutions out there, different manufacturers. I certainly see networks being handled in-house, I would say, for the next year or two for sure. As we go, we might start asking our partners to do some more of the kind of the upfront basic layout stuff, or we might guide them and have them do some work. But for the foreseeable future, it's absolutely going to be handled in-house by our experts. Right now, it's a lot of the design's done by Scott Isaacs, and the actual kind of legwork is done by Paul Garner and Eamon, our two network experts on our team. And we might actually get one or two more network guys in-house in the next couple of years as we start to see increased volume. So the short-term answer to your question right now is that's handled in-house by our team with help from our partners to get us the required information.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
David Lairdell, I see that you're on the call. If you have a second to hop on and just let me know what's your feedback on this networking solution, or both networks in general, and this webinar, if it was helpful.
Yeah, the one question that came to mind is if this is like DIRTT Power in the sense of with the power components, you can create an entirely new environment, or you can utilize the existing infrastructure. Mm-hmm. Is there a point of scale where DIRTT Networks kind of is a good starting point, and can you tie it into existing patch panels and infrastructure?
That's a good question. I'm going to let Garner. Paul, you want to handle that one?
So typically, if a space is getting renovated, typically the data cables are going to be pulled out and done pre-terminated again. So it's going to be like an initial install. But we have had requests in the past where they were just bringing the network cables out the drywall and coiling them up in the ceiling, ready for the dirt walls to come in. We just, in that case, just supplied a CP, which they could just terminate into, and it kind of acts almost like a junction box, I guess, so they could, or a zone box. And then it is still one-to-one. There's not that extra availability space in the CP for them, but they still have a port that they can click to locally as opposed to going back to the IT room. So that saved them a bit of cash on the install there by not taking the cables all the way out back to the source, right?
Yeah, so just to jump in on that thought, I think that's exactly the issues. People think, okay, well, that's great that you have this great solution and all, but I have an existing solution, and I'm not just going to, integrate your solution as I continue to build or change or move or add or whatever. I want to match existing, or if I'm tying into the same IT closet. The thought that you can't go with a DIRTT Network solution is not correct. You absolutely can. I mean, in the end of the day, the truth is it's, as far as from a user standpoint, you're a person sitting at a desk and you have two network cables, and all you're worried about is how that network cable gets back to the IT closet. And it absolutely, you can go from a conventional build, and you can interfere with a DIRTT build partway through, and we actually did that. Paul, the reason I wanted you to jump in is because I seem to remember the project we were working on. You know what it was? It was Texas A&M University, which did go DIRTT Networks. There was a whole bunch of new build space in Texas A&M University, but a lot of the space was we were feeding back into IT closets that already had conventional home runs in there, and it was a combination of the two. It was completely new build, but it was also integrated DIRTT build into an old conventional. So it actually made the transition between conventional to kind of in between conventional mixed with DIRTT to the new buildings being DIRTT. So it absolutely can be done, but it has to be handled in the design phase. And in that scenario, the only reason why we're able to get that, because David, they said the exact same thing. They said, well, we already have this conventional stuff. We're not just going to switch systems and manage two systems. I certainly couldn't answer that question. The person who could was Scott Isaacs. Scott Isaacs flew down there, explained to the IT staff how they could manage both systems and how they work together, and it didn't take much for Scott to convince them to do that, and that's actually exactly what they did. So,
and the difference between, I guess, our power solutions and the network solutions is inherently the way they're done on site is different. We can chop and change with the power. We can add junction boxes there. We can add a zone box if we need to make that flexible. But with networks, typically, whether it's a drywall, dirt wall, floor box, ceiling, WAP point, wireless access point, it's all being run on the same system. It's all been the same manufacturer, whether it be Pando or whatever, and it's all going back to the same location and being managed on a system where the guys that are working there can manage it easily. So very rarely do we just do a project on the network side, at least, where we just pick up the dirt walls, because it just kind of makes not a lot of sense where a drywall location right next to it wouldn't be coming from the same consolidation point. So it's another way of thinking in that terms, I guess. Look at the whole project and not just the modular aspect of the walls when you're specifying on the network side.
That's a good point, Paul. Yeah, our original design, as long as we have the information, we'll always include the drywall. We won't just stick to dirt walls. A lot of times we only get the information on the dirt walls, and we'll come back and we'll say, can you please, if it's obviously a new build, can you please let us know what's going on in the rest of the building, and we'll pick up absolutely everything. Scott Isaacs gets Paul Garner in trouble every once in a while. He's like, why the fuck didn't you pick up the drywall locations?
So then, to utilize the existing, you would just need to match up manufacturers.
That's what we did at Texas A&M University. Yeah, they're all that's Leviton. That's a Leviton install.
Okay. Yeah, the other thing that might be good for the next network presentation is maybe just briefly going over that section of the checklist.
Yeah.
Because I know a lot of times, you just like with power, you hardly ever get stuff from the architect or the end user unless it's a full-blown CD project.
Okay.
So there's sometimes when I don't quite know how to answer certain things like what shielding is and when you use copper or fiber.
Okay. All right, that's a good point. And like I said, for the sake of this, a couple things. One, again, the way I handle it, and I got to be honest, I've had times when I've had a group of people in Calgary and I'm doing a presentation, all of a sudden they start asking questions that are over my head, and I say the same thing every single time. I said, listen, this is my knowledge base. This is where I stop. I'd love to get a meeting set up with Scott Isaacs, and every group that leaves with Scott Isaacs' contact information, and the DIRTT rep sets up a meeting with Scott after the fact, and of the groups that come through, I'd say definitely 60 or 70% of them follow up with Scott. So in a situation where you might get stuck on a question or something like that, don't hesitate to say, listen, I'd love to get Scott Isaacs in here to meet with you, and that's what he's for. I mean, the guy hops around North America taking meetings. So, but to answer your other question.
Yeah, that's a good point though. Like the next webinar we're going to do is going to be geared heavily towards our partners, because there's going to be way more partners on there. So we'll go over the checklist, maybe scope of work documents and install drawings as well, and really make it more real to them, as in a real project might be specified.
That's a good point. Yeah, we'll start on the lower level. We were trying, for the sake of this webinar, is not to get into too much depth. Especially considering our company, we got a lot of DIRTT PMs here, and they're not the quickest people in the entire world. So, sorry, Shannon, that was just a joke. No, but I meant this was supposed to be kind of a lower level webinar. But I think Paul's right with the partners that we get in the next one. We can definitely jump into the checklist and the scope of work document and stuff like that. So.
Okay, great. Yeah, that sounds good.
Sounds good. My apologies to, let's see, Chris Yost, Shannon Bowe, Chris and Shannon.
We're the only two that matter anyways. It's okay.
And the only two that showed up, which tells you something.
Yeah, they're the only two that cared as well, which says a lot.
I love it. Okay, guys, that's all I have for today. Unless anyone has any other questions, I think we can probably call it.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, thanks, Clayton.
We're good. Thanks, everyone, for attending. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Clayton.
Thanks, guys.